Chapter 1. The Tense First Meeting. The scent of jasmine tea lingered faintly in the air as Olivia Tran adjusted the sleeves of her modest beige dress, her heart beating a quiet but insistent rhythm. She stood at the front porch of the Walker residence, a charming but slightly worn house nestled in a peaceful neighborhood in San Jose. The white door creaked slightly as it opened, revealing the woman she had only seen in photos, Marilyn Walker. Marilyn's eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned Olivia from head to toe. She didn't smile. Instead, she tilted her head and said flatly, "You must be Olivia." Olivia smiled politely. "Yes, ma'am. It's so nice to finally meet you." Marilyn stepped aside stiffly. "Come in. Andrew is setting the table." The inside of the house was tidy, with hints of old-fashioned decor, faded family photos, a crocheted tablecloth, and a large cross above the dining room. Olivia noticed a slight chill in the air, not from the temperature, but from the tension. Andrew greeted her with a warm hug, whispering in her ear, "Don't worry. She just needs time." Time, Olivia thought, was not the issue. As they sat down to dinner, the atmosphere remained uncomfortably formal. Marilyn ladled out soup in silence before finally speaking, her words like cold water. "So, Olivia," she said, not looking up, "what do your parents do again?" There it was. Olivia kept her expression neutral. "My mother passed away when I was in high school. My father is retired now and lives quietly in Orange County." Marilyn hummed, unimpressed. "And your job?" "Andrew said you're a freelancer." "I'm a freelance interior designer," Olivia replied, her tone still gentle. "Mostly residential spaces. I enjoy flexible work." Marilyn raised an eyebrow. "Flexible? So, not stable, I assume." Andrew coughed lightly. "Mom." But Marilyn ignored him. She sipped her tea and continued. "You know, it's important for a wife to have a stable income if she's going to be part of this family, especially if children come into the picture." Olivia paused. "I understand, Mrs. Walker. I'm financially independent and have been for years." "Really?" Marilyn smiled thinly. "That's good. But I suppose you don't own a home, do you?" "No," Olivia said simply. "I rent an apartment in Palo Alto, close to most of my clients." Marilyn chuckled. "Of course. Palo Alto must be expensive for someone on a flexible income." Andrew dropped his fork. "Enough, Mom. We're not here to talk about money." Marilyn gave her son a cool look. "I'm just trying to understand who my son is marrying." "I hope you understand, Olivia. We Walkers have worked hard to build a good name. It's only natural I want to be careful." Olivia forced a smile. "I appreciate your concern." Inside, her heart was heavy. Not because of the words, but because she had seen this all before. The subtle humiliation, the judgment veiled behind concern. But she said nothing. She would not explain that her retired father was the CEO of Lumen Group, a name too powerful to be ignored in Silicon Valley. She would not mention the trust fund she had never touched, the multiple degrees she earned quietly. She had chosen a simple life, and now she was being judged for it. The dinner continued, mostly in awkward silence. After dessert, Marilyn walked Olivia to the door. "I hope you'll think carefully before rushing into marriage, dear," she said. "Love is sweet when you're young. But reality is made of bills and burdens." Olivia looked her in the eyes, her own calm and unwavering. "I agree. Which is why I've worked hard to carry my own burdens, Mrs. Walker. Even the invisible ones." For a moment, Marilyn looked unsettled. But she said nothing more. As Olivia stepped into the cold night air, Andrew caught her hand. "I'm so sorry. She's not always like this." Olivia looked up at him. "It's okay. I didn't expect anything different." But deep down, she wondered how long she could live in a house where love had conditions and respect had to be earned through status. She didn't want to fight. But she wouldn't bow either. And that night, for the first time, she realized some truths may stay hidden, but they carry the weight of change. Forever. Chapter 2. Unreasonable Trials. The following week, Olivia moved into Andrew's modest townhouse, just a few miles away from his mother's home. It wasn't grand or flashy, but Olivia liked it. The kitchen had soft morning light, and the living room smelled faintly of lavender from the candles she brought. But peace didn't last long. Marilyn started calling early in the morning, often around 7 a.m. "Olivia, are you free today? I need help organizing the garage. It's a mess and Andrew's always too busy." Or worse, "I'm making dinner tonight. Can you bring dessert? I expect something homemade, nothing store-bought, please." Andrew said you cook. Olivia rarely declined. She believed in giving people a chance. Besides, Andrew insisted his mother just needed time to warm up. "It's not personal," he would say. "She's always been tough, even with me." But to Olivia, it was starting to feel personal. When she came over to help clean the garage, Marilyn greeted her with a worn apron, rubber gloves, and a clipboard. "We're starting from the back," she instructed. "Those shelves haven't been touched in years. I hope you're not scared of a little dust." For 4 hours, Olivia scrubbed, lifted, and sorted boxes filled with old books, broken garden tools, and holiday decorations from a decade ago. Not once did Marilyn offer a glass of water. Not once did she say, "Thank you." Instead, she made comments like, "You missed a spot. Did no one teach you how to label properly? You're not used to manual work, are you?" By the end, Olivia's arms ached. She wiped her brow and smiled anyway. "It's done." Marilyn nodded curtly. "Fine. I'll check it later." The next day, Marilyn dropped by unannounced. "I brought some groceries. I thought maybe Olivia could make us dinner tonight. Traditional roast beef. I already bought the meat, so it won't go to waste." It was 3 p.m. Dinner was expected by 6. Olivia put on an apron and got to work. She didn't complain, didn't show irritation. When Andrew came home to see her sweating over the stove, he looked concerned. "Did she give you any notice?" "No," Olivia said softly. "But it's okay." But it wasn't. Not when Marilyn tasted the meal later and wrinkled her nose. It's not how I would have done it. The beef's a bit dry, don't you think?" Olivia looked down at her plate. Her hands were still red from the hot water she used to scrub the roasting pan. She said nothing. Later that night, while they cleaned up, Andrew gently touched her shoulder. "You don't have to keep saying yes, Liv." Olivia hesitated. "I'm not doing it for her. I'm doing it for you." He frowned. "But what about you? I don't want you to be miserable." She gave him a tired smile. "I'm okay. Just promise me this won't always be the way it is." He took her hand. "I promise. One day, she'll see who you are." Olivia looked away, biting back the words she wanted to say. She already sees. She just doesn't care. Because in Marilyn's eyes, the quiet strength of Olivia. The calendar turned to November, and with it came the subtle shift in the air, cooler mornings, golden leaves, and holiday advertisements on every screen. For most couples, this season marked the beginning of warmth, togetherness, and memories. For Olivia, it marked the deepening of her silent endurance. Every Saturday, like clockwork, Marilyn summoned her for something, helping decorate the house early for Thanksgiving, running errands she claimed were too small to bother Andrew with, or assisting her in sorting through donation boxes that suspiciously looked like junk Marilyn had been avoiding for years. One day, Marilyn called her again. "I'm hosting a church committee brunch this Sunday. You'll help me prepare, of course." "Of course," Olivia replied, swallowing the sigh building in her chest. "And wear something presentable. Nothing too simple. We wouldn't want people to think Andrew married someone without taste." Olivia stared at the phone for a moment after the call ended. She placed it down gently, sat in silence, and then walked to her wardrobe. From the back, She pulled out a pale blue silk blouse, simple, elegant, and unbranded, like most of her clothes now. She had once worn dresses tailored by Italian designers, styled by assistants, and photographed for fashion pages. Now, she wore plain slacks and did her own laundry in a laundromat down the block. And yet, she didn't miss the riches. Only the respect. Sunday came, and so did the scrutiny. As the church ladies arrived, polished, coiffed, pearls in place, Marilyn proudly introduced herself at the door. When Olivia walked in, carrying the tray of canapés she made from scratch, the introductions were brief and clipped. "This is Olivia," Marilyn said. "My son's wife. She's helping out, like a distant niece or a polite neighbor, not family." Olivia smiled anyway. She served tea. She picked up plates. She stood in the kitchen while laughter echoed from the living room. Occasionally, she caught snippets. "Such a lovely home, Marilyn. Your son is quite the catch, so successful. And his wife? Where's she from?" "Oh, just a freelancer. Sweet girl. Quiet." After the guests left, Marilyn walked into the kitchen, inspecting the leftover food. "You didn't make enough lemon bars. They're usually a hit." "I followed the quantity you told me," Olivia said calmly. Marilyn shrugged. "Maybe next time you'll be more thoughtful." Olivia took a deep breath and turned back to cleaning. That night, after Andrew fell asleep, Olivia sat on the balcony wrapped in a cardigan. She opened her sketch pad and began to draw a warm, open-concept living room with high ceilings, oak floors, and a fireplace that didn't burn logs but memories. It was a habit she couldn't let go. When words failed her, she designed what peace might look like. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. A message from her father. "How are you holding up, sweetheart? Let me know if you want me to fly in." She stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "I'm okay, Papa. Still learning." She didn't mention Marilyn. She didn't mention the subtle barbs, the insults dressed as concern, or the growing ache in her chest each day. Because Olivia wasn't here to be saved. She was here to see how far love could go when dignity was tested. And as much as it hurt, she wasn't going to break. Not yet. Chapter 4. A cold wedding. Olivia stood in front of the mirror in a quiet dressing room, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the simple pearl earrings she had chosen herself. No stylist. No fuss. Her gown was modest, an off-shoulder ivory dress with minimal embroidery, elegant but intentionally low-key. It was her wedding day. But instead of the warmth and joy that she had once imagined, the morning was filled with silence. The kind that hums in the background like the stillness before a storm. Marilyn had insisted on a small and simple ceremony. "We don't need to go over the top," she had declared. "No point in inviting people who don't know the bride's side anyway." Olivia said nothing then. But the words cut deep. Only her father knew the truth, that Olivia had chosen this route. She wanted to live her own life, independent of the shadow of Lumen Group. She had chosen not to reveal her identity, not even during the wedding preparations, because she didn't want her wealth to be a shield from judgment. But Marilyn used that silence as ammunition. And today it showed. The church was half empty. No floral arches, no live music, no bridesmaids. Marilyn hadn't invited a single relative from her side, claiming that most of them were too busy or too far away. Andrew had questioned it. "Why aren't Aunt Linda and Uncle Mark coming?" "They're traveling," Marilyn had lied. The truth was, she had discouraged them from coming altogether. "This marriage isn't worth making a fuss over," she had said during a phone call Olivia had accidentally overheard. The ceremony was brief. Andrew's eyes never left Olivia's. He held her hands tightly as he read his vows, genuine, vulnerable, promising to love and protect her no matter what. Olivia's own voice trembled as she spoke hers, but her words were strong. They kissed to polite applause. A few of Andrew's co-workers, Some college friends, and two of Olivia's childhood friends she had quietly invited without telling Marilyn. No music. No first dance. The reception was held at a modest restaurant nearby. Marilyn sat stiffly the whole time, barely touching her food, offering tight smiles to anyone who tried to make small talk. At one point, a guest asked her, "Your daughter-in-law is beautiful. Where is her family?" Marilyn waved it off with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "She's from a small town. Modest background. Not much family left." Olivia overheard. Her stomach clenched. But she took another sip of water and smiled at her friend across the table. Later, in the quiet of the bridal suite, Andrew wrapped his arms around her from behind. "You were perfect today." Olivia smiled sadly. It didn't feel like a celebration. He turned her around. "It's still our beginning. And we'll write the rest of it better than this." She nodded and leaned into his chest. But the truth lingered in her heart like fog on a winter window. Marilyn had made it clear she didn't believe Olivia deserved this marriage. And nothing Olivia did seemed to change her mind. Still, Olivia clung to one hope. Maybe, just maybe, time would teach her mother-in-law that love wasn't measured in status, and worth wasn't written in bank accounts. But for now, all Olivia could do was hold Andrew's hand tighter and walk with quiet grace through the coldest wedding day she never wanted. Chapter 5: A House of Thorns. Married life, for most newlyweds, is supposed to begin with warmth, a shared toothbrush holder, lazy breakfasts in bed, inside jokes whispered beneath the covers. But for Olivia, it began with walking on eggshells. A week after the wedding, Marilyn called. "I think it's time you moved into the main house," she said curtly. "Andrew can't drive back and forth to see me every day. It's exhausting." Olivia hesitated. She had grown to love their small townhouse, the quiet, the privacy, the space to breathe. But she looked at Andrew, who looked torn, and nodded. "If it helps your mom, we can try." That word, try, would soon become the most repeated word in her marriage. The Walker house was not a home. It was a battlefield with no shouting, just silence and pointed glances. Marilyn dictated everything. "You use too much detergent in the laundry. Why are you always in your room? Are you hiding something?" Women who truly love their husbands take care of the mother too. Olivia washed dishes, ironed clothes, scrubbed floors. When she tried to suggest using a cleaner to help, Marilyn raised an eyebrow. "What? You don't know how to clean?" "I do," Olivia said calmly, "but I also have deadlines." "Deadlines?" Marilyn scoffed. "Deadlines don't cook dinner." Olivia worked quietly on her laptop at night, taking on freelance design projects just to feel like herself. She rarely spoke during dinner. She no longer had the energy to argue. Andrew tried to stand up for her, but his efforts often ended in guilt. "Just give her more time, Liv. She's not used to change." One night, Olivia found herself alone in the kitchen, scrubbing burnt rice off a pot Marilyn had accidentally left on high heat. Her hands stung. Her eyes burned from exhaustion. She leaned against the counter and whispered to herself, "This can't be forever." That night, she emailed her assistant in secret. "Put all my Lumen Group shares under dormant. I won't be accessing anything this year. Also, decline the media inquiry. I don't want my name in any publication for now." She had buried her identity deep, but it was costing her. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. Marilyn hosted a small Sunday brunch. She invited 2 neighbors and one of Andrew's former teachers. Olivia prepared most of the food herself, quiche, scones, even a fruit tart that took her hours. As everyone gathered, Marilyn walked into the room holding a delicate porcelain teacup. She tapped it lightly for attention. "I just want to say," she began with a smile, "how proud I am of my son. He's accomplished so much. And now he's married to a sweet girl who's learning to be a real part of this family." Everyone clapped politely. And with a bit more polish, she added, Glancing at Olivia's modest outfit, she'll fit right in. Olivia's heart sank. Later, in the kitchen, one of the neighbors leaned in and whispered, "Don't let her push you around, dear. You have kind eyes. And real grace. That scares women like her." Olivia smiled politely, then excused herself and went upstairs. She sat on the edge of the bed, took off her shoes, and stared at the closet full of clothes she no longer wore, the tailored dresses, the silk blouses, the heels she once walked in with confidence. She didn't cry. She just whispered, "I'm not afraid of her." But maybe, just maybe, she was afraid of what she was slowly becoming under her roof. Not broken. Not bitter. Just invisible. Chapter 6. The call that changed everything. It was a gray Thursday morning when Olivia's phone buzzed. Once, then twice. She ignored it the first time. She was halfway through editing a set of kitchen renders for a client in Palo Alto. But when it buzzed again, and then a third time in quick succession, something inside her shifted. She picked it up. "Dad, Liv. Emergency board meeting. I need you." Her fingers froze on the trackpad. The words were short, but they carried weight. Her father never sent messages like that unless something serious had happened. She checked the time. 9:32 a.m. Downstairs, she could already hear Marilyn banging cabinet doors, mumbling about how Olivia had forgotten to soak the lentils for dinner. Again. Olivia stood up slowly, grabbed her coat, and walked downstairs. "I'm stepping out for a meeting," she said, voice level. Marilyn turned, wearing her usual disapproving frown. "Again? What kind of work keeps you out all day and pays so little?" Olivia didn't flinch. "The kind that requires responsibility." Marilyn scoffed. "If you were my daughter, I'd have taught you what real work looks like." Olivia simply nodded. "Thankfully, I had a father who taught me something else." She walked out before Marilyn could reply. The drive to the Lumen Group headquarters in downtown San Jose was smooth, but Olivia's thoughts were anything but. She hadn't stepped into that building in over a year. Her last formal act had been to resign from the board quietly, without press. She had told her father she needed time to live as someone ordinary. He hadn't argued. Now, as the elevator doors opened and she stepped into the 42nd floor boardroom, all eyes turned. There he was, Lumen Kwong, tall, composed, still in his signature navy suit. But his face was more lined, his jaw tighter. "Olivia," he greeted, his voice softer than usual. "Papa," she nodded. "What happened?" He gestured to a chair and turned to the other board members. "Now we can begin." 2 hours later, she emerged from the building exhausted. A sudden acquisition attempt from an overseas competitor had thrown the group's entire tech division into jeopardy. Olivia, with her keen eye for strategy and negotiation, had defused a ticking bomb. Again, the board members had applauded. Her father had looked at her with a mix of pride and sorrow. "I'm sorry you have to keep hiding," he said in Vietnamese, just before she left. "You were born to lead, Olivia, not to serve tea to people who don't know who you are." She smiled faintly. "Sometimes, Papa, it's not about hiding. It's about watching who people are when they think I'm nobody." She returned home at 4 p.m. Marilyn was waiting in the living room, arms crossed, a dish towel slung over her shoulder. "You're back." "Yes." "No explanation?" "I had a meeting. It ran long." Marilyn narrowed her eyes. "You think you're too good to tell me the truth now?" Olivia's smile was quiet and different. There was steel in it. "Would it matter? You've already decided who I am." Before Marilyn could answer, Olivia walked past her and into the kitchen. That night, she cooked dinner with ease, served the dishes, sat beside Andrew. And for the first time, she no longer felt like she needed to earn her place at that table. Because a door had reopened. And with it, a storm was quietly brewing. Sooner or later, the truth would break through. And when it did, no one in that house would be able to pretend Olivia was just a poor girl anymore. Chapter 7. A mother-in-law's curiosity. The next few days were different. Marilyn noticed it first in Olivia's eyes. Something had shifted. She was still polite, still soft-spoken, but no longer flinched at cutting remarks. She no longer tried to defend herself, explain herself, or prove anything. She simply existed, firmly and calmly, as if rooted in some truth Marilyn didn't yet understand. And that disturbed her. One afternoon, as Olivia left for another meeting, Marilyn stood by the window, her arms crossed tight. "Always dressed like she's off to run a Fortune 500, she muttered. Then she paused. Something clicked. Fortune 500. No one had ever looked into Olivia Tran. She had always seemed so unremarkable. Too quiet, too modest, too poor. Marilyn had dismissed her almost instantly after the first meeting. But now she was curious. That night, Marilyn did something she hadn't done in years. She opened her dusty laptop and Googled Olivia Tran, Palo Alto interior designer. Nothing useful. Just a LinkedIn page with vague work history and no photo. Then, almost as an afterthought, she typed Olivia Tran. She stared at the screen. Dozens of links appeared. Vietnamese language business journals. A Forbes 30 under 30 Asia profile. Charity gala photos. Headlines like, Daughter of Lumen Group's CEO steps back from spotlight after graduating from Stanford. Olivia Tran, the quiet heiress who turned down power. Marilyn's heart raced. Her mouth went dry. There was a photo of Olivia, wearing a midnight blue gown at a tech summit, standing beside her father. A caption beneath read, The only daughter of Lumen Quang. Known for her reclusive nature and philanthropic work. Marilyn closed the laptop. Her hands were shaking. She had spent months mocking, ordering, insulting someone who could buy and sell her entire life without blinking. And yet, Olivia never once mentioned it. The next morning, Marilyn was unrecognizably different. She cooked breakfast, eggs, toast, even sliced fresh fruit. Olivia came downstairs to the smell and blinked in surprise. I thought I'd make something for once, Marilyn said, her tone unnaturally light. Olivia sat slowly. Thank you. Marilyn poured her a cup of coffee, trying to sound casual. So, have you always liked interior design? Olivia looked up. Yes, you must be good at it. I mean, if you're so dedicated. There it was. The start of the dance. Olivia smiled faintly. I'm comfortable where I am. Marilyn cleared her throat. And your father, he's in Orange County, right? He travels a lot. I heard there's a businessman down there. Lumen Quang. Big name. Vietnamese American. You ever heard of him? Olivia sipped her coffee. I have. Marilyn waited. But Olivia said nothing more. Not a hint. Not a boast. Nothing. Just poise. Grace. Power cloaked in gentleness. That afternoon, Marilyn called her sister. I think I made a terrible mistake, she whispered into the phone. I judged Andrew's wife before I ever knew her. And now, I think she might be someone we don't deserve. On the other end, her sister said, then be honest with her. Apologize. Marilyn's voice cracked. But what if she never forgives me? And indeed, Marilyn was right to worry. Because the moment she Googled Olivia's real name was the moment her apology would no longer be about understanding. It would be about fear. And Olivia? She had seen this switch happen many times before, in business meetings, in social circles, even among distant relatives. She knew exactly what it looked like when respect didn't come from who you were, but what you had. And she had no intention of rewarding it. Chapter 8. The truth exposed. The days that followed were a quiet storm. Marilyn, now aware of Olivia's true identity, moved with the awkward grace of someone walking on broken glass. She offered help with chores she once assigned with contempt. She complimented Olivia's cooking. She even began bringing home small gifts, lavender soap, fancy olive oil, a set of embroidered towels she found on sale. But Olivia noticed. She noticed the change in tone, the sudden caution, the way Marilyn no longer barked but asked. It wasn't warmth. It wasn't kindness. It was deference, the kind that comes too late. Still, Olivia said nothing. Until one afternoon when Andrew came home looking puzzled, holding a small envelope. "This was left in our mailbox," he said. Inside was a handwritten card in ornate cursive. "To the daughter of Mr. Lemin Kwong. We would be honored if you could join us at the Silicon Valley Women in Leadership Brunch as our guest of honor." Andrew stared at the name for a long time. "Olivia." She sighed and sat down, folding the card slowly. "I meant to tell you," she said softly. "I didn't want it to change anything." He blinked. "You're that Olivia?" She nodded. "I've been on the board since I was 24. I stepped away last year. I just wanted to live differently, to find a life that wasn't built on money or headlines." Andrew looked away for a moment, running his fingers through his hair. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want you to see me differently. And especially not your mother." At that, Andrew went silent. But his silence was not disappointment. It was realization. Later that night, Andrew confronted his mother. "Did you know?" Marilyn didn't answer right away. "I found out recently," she admitted. "And now you're suddenly polite. Suddenly helpful." "Andrew, I didn't know who she was." "That's the point," he cut in, voice low but sharp. "You treated her horribly when you thought she was poor. You judged her, humiliated her, made her feel small, and now that you've realized she's rich, you're trying to rewrite it all." Marilyn opened her mouth to defend herself, but found nothing to say. Andrew stared at her with quiet fury. "You raised me to value character, not cash. So tell me, what does that make you now?" The next morning, Olivia found Marilyn waiting by the stairs. Her expression was different, tight, unsure. "I owe you an apology," she said softly. "You do," Olivia replied, not unkindly. "I treated you unfairly. I assumed things. I was cruel. But now that I know who you are..." Olivia held up a hand. "Stop right there." Marilyn froze. "This is exactly why I didn't say anything. You only changed when you found out I was someone you deemed important. That's not respect. That's hierarchy. I didn't mean it that way. But that's what it is. You don't know me, Marilyn." "Not really. You never tried." Olivia's voice didn't rise, but it cut with clarity. "All this time, you saw a girl who didn't deserve your son. A girl who needed to prove herself. But I never needed your approval. I only wanted peace." She turned to leave, then paused. "I forgive your ignorance, but I won't reward it." Marilyn sat on the stairs long after Olivia left. For the first time, the power had shifted. And not because of money, but because of truth. And for Marilyn Walker, the truth was unbearable. She had pushed away the best thing that had ever happened to her family, not because of who Olivia was, but because of who she wasn't allowed to be in her eyes. Chapter 9. The first and last apology. It had been 3 days since that conversation on the stairs. The house was quieter than usual. Not the peace of rest, but the silence of tension. Marilyn kept mostly to herself, staying in her room or leaving early for errands. Andrew buried himself in work. Olivia continued her freelance projects with a steely calm, never once bringing up what had passed. But beneath that calm, something in Olivia had hardened. She didn't seek revenge. She didn't gloat. She simply moved with dignity, like someone who had outgrown the room she was once imprisoned in. And Marilyn felt it. That distance. That absence of need. One afternoon, Marilyn did something she hadn't done in years. She sat down and began to write. "Dear Olivia, I have always believed that people deserve to be treated based on who they are, not what they own, not what they wear, not who their parents are. I failed you. I failed my son. I failed myself. I judged you before I ever knew you. I made you feel small. I wanted you to earn respect I should have given freely. And when I discovered your truth, I did not feel proud. I felt ashamed, because I saw how wrong I had been, not about your name, but about your heart. You owe me nothing. But I needed you to hear this from me, not from guilt, not from fear, from truth. I'm sorry, Marilyn. She folded the letter carefully and left it on Olivia's desk. Then she left the house without saying a word. That evening, Olivia found the letter. She read it slowly. Once, then twice. She did not cry. She did not smile. Instead, she placed it gently into her drawer, next to old sketches and worn pages of a journal she had kept since she was 16. She told Andrew about it only after dinner. She wrote me a letter. He looked up from the dishes. Did you read it? Yes. What did you think? I think it was the first honest thing she's done for me. Andrew paused, then said quietly, Do you want to forgive her? Olivia took a long breath. I can forgive her, she said. But that doesn't mean I can forget. That weekend, Olivia visited a local park where she used to sketch before she got married. She brought her notepad, a cup of coffee, and sat beneath a tree turning gold with autumn. She drew a room again, soft light, a dining table with no sharp corners, chairs placed equally apart. A room where no one had to earn their place. A woman walked by and glanced over. That's beautiful, she said. Thank you, Olivia replied, smiling. She didn't say she was the daughter of a billionaire. She didn't say she had just been offered a seat on one of the most powerful nonprofit boards in California. She didn't say anything except, thank you, because in that moment, she didn't need to prove anything. Not to a stranger. Not to a mother-in-law. Not even to herself. Back at home, Marilyn sat in her room, staring at an old family photo of Andrew as a child. In it, she was younger, softer. She whispered, I hope it's not too late. But somewhere deep down, she already knew. Some apologies are not meant to erase the past. They're just the beginning of learning to live with it. Chapter 10. A door that won't reopen. A crisp morning breeze swept through the kitchen window as Olivia brewed coffee in silence. The house felt heavier than usual, not loud, not chaotic, just tired. Like the aftermath of a long storm that had shaken the foundations but left the roof intact. She opened her inbox. Another invitation, this one to speak at a young women's leadership panel in San Francisco. She closed it quietly. She wasn't ready to return to that world. Not yet. Down the hall, Marilyn lingered near the door, letter in hand. Her fingers hovered, but she didn't knock. She turned and walked away. That afternoon, Olivia and Andrew sat on the back porch, sipping warm tea and watching golden leaves fall. She's trying, Andrew said softly. I know. She really didn't know who you were. I know. He glanced sideways at her. You're still not going to let her back in, are you? Olivia exhaled, her breath a cloud in the cooling air. Would you? Andrew was quiet for a long moment. No, he finally said. Not after how she treated you. Not after how she made you feel. Olivia leaned her head against his shoulder. That's the thing, Andrew. I could have lived with her disapproval. I didn't care if she thought I wasn't good enough. But I'll never forget the way she made me feel like I had to shrink to be accepted. Like I owed her something just for existing. She looked down at her hands, fingers wrapped around the teacup. She didn't just judge me. She belittled me. Over and over. And only when she saw the wealth did she change. Andrew reached over and held her hand. I'm sorry I didn't protect you better. You did, she whispered. In your own way. And now, we protect each other. That night, Marilyn knocked gently on their bedroom door. Andrew opened it. I made tea, she said awkwardly. Would you two join me in the living room? Olivia came to the doorway. There was a moment of silence. Then Olivia said softly, Thank you. But no. Marilyn blinked. I understand. She walked away slowly, her back a little more hunched than usual. A week later, Olivia sat at her favorite cafe downtown, flipping through her sketchpad. A woman approached her. "Excuse me," the woman said. "Are you Olivia Minon? From Lumen Group?" Olivia hesitated. "I used to be. I just wanted to thank you. That scholarship your family foundation gave me changed my life." Olivia's eyes warmed. "I'm glad. Truly." The woman smiled and left, and Olivia sat there for a long time, not as a billionaire's daughter, not as someone's wife, but as a woman who had learned that real worth is not proven in moments of wealth, but in the silence of dignity, even when no one believes you deserve it. At home, Marilyn sat alone at the dinner table, staring at 2 empty seats. She had set the table for 3, but only one was filled, and no apology could fill the others. Because some doors, once closed by cruelty, don't open with regret. They stay shut, quietly reminding us of what respect must look like before the truth is known. Chapter 11. The Son Who Walked Away. Andrew hadn't spoken to his mother in 4 days. Not since the quiet refusal on the night she brought tea. Not since Olivia, with all the calm strength in the world, looked Marilyn in the eye and said no. He wasn't angry in the way people often were, not loud, not storming out. But something had closed in him. Something deep. One morning, as he prepared to leave for work, Marilyn stopped him at the door. "Andrew, can we talk?" He looked up. "I don't have time." "Just a moment." He exhaled. "Fine." They sat at the dining table, 2 cups of coffee, untouched. "I know I've hurt her," Marilyn began. "I've tried to show I'm sorry." Andrew's eyes remained on the steam rising from his cup. "You think this is about Olivia?" Marilyn blinked. "Isn't it?" "No," he said. "It's about you. About me. About all the years you judged people because of where they came from. How you taught me to smile at people but only respect the ones who had something to offer. I never meant." "You did. And maybe you didn't see it. But I lived it." His voice didn't rise, but it was steady and final. "You didn't just fail Olivia. You failed me, too." Marilyn swallowed hard. "So that's it? You're walking away from me?" Andrew stood. "No. But I'm not coming back either, not to the version of you that makes love conditional." He picked up his keys and walked out the door. Marilyn sat alone at the table. The coffee had gone cold. That evening, Olivia and Andrew went for a walk. They passed rows of oak trees shedding their leaves and small houses glowing from within. Andrew was quiet, hands in his coat pockets. "Do you regret anything?" he asked. Olivia shook her head. "Only that I kept trying to be accepted when I should have protected myself sooner." He nodded slowly. "I regret I didn't step up earlier." She stopped and looked at him. "You were trying to love 2 people at once. That's not weakness. That's compassion." He smiled. "You always give people more grace than they deserve." She shrugged gently. "Someone has to." They kept walking. Meanwhile, Marilyn sat alone in her room, sifting through old photographs. One of them caught her eye. Andrew at 6 years old, standing in a school play costume, looking nervously into the crowd. She remembered that day. She'd almost missed it, too busy grading papers. But she remembered the moment he saw her in the audience and smiled. He had always forgiven her late arrivals. He always came back. But this time, she wasn't sure he would. And that terrified her more than anything. The next morning, she knocked on Olivia's studio door. No reply. She opened it slowly. The room was empty, tidy, quiet. On the desk sat a single note in Olivia's elegant handwriting. "We'll be staying at the townhouse for a while. Please take care of yourself." No anger. No venom. Just distance. Measured. Final. Marilyn folded the note and held it to her chest. She was losing her son. She had already lost her daughter-in-law, and for the first time in years, she realized some wounds don't need time to fade. They just need truth. And when truth is ignored for too long, even love might not survive. Chapter 12. The Quiet Rebuilding. The townhouse was smaller, quieter, and infinitely more peaceful than the Walker home. Sunlight streamed through the east-facing windows each morning, landing gently on white walls and potted plants. Olivia set up her studio in the corner of the living room. Andrew worked from a standing desk in the spare bedroom. There were no sharp words, no judgmental glances, only the quiet, steady rhythm of two people learning to breathe again. "I forgot what this felt like," Olivia said one morning, sipping her coffee on the balcony. Andrew looked up from his laptop. "What?" "Not having to brace myself every time I walk into the kitchen." He smiled, though a hint of guilt flickered in his eyes. "It shouldn't have taken this long." Olivia placed her cup down. "We can't undo it, but we don't have to keep carrying it either." They began small rituals. Morning walks through the park. Weekly dinner dates at their favorite noodle shop. Late-night board games on the floor with cheap wine and real laughter. Olivia started taking on larger design projects again. Her name still carried weight in the industry, though she insisted on keeping it off marketing materials. One of her clients, a high-profile entrepreneur, offered to invest in her own firm. "You're a brand by yourself," the woman said. "You don't need anyone else's name to validate you." Olivia smiled politely. Maybe one day. Andrew's relationship with his mother remained strained. She texted occasionally updates about her health. Photos of the garden, short messages like, "Saw a chair today that reminded me of your wedding. Hope you're eating well. Miss you." Andrew responded, but sparingly. There was no anger in his replies, just distance, like someone replying from the edge of a closing door. And Olivia understood. Because some connections weren't meant to be broken, but they also weren't meant to be repaired without effort. One evening, as Olivia finalized a minimalist kitchen layout for a San Francisco loft, Andrew leaned against the doorframe watching her. "You're glowing," he said. She glanced up. From the screen. From living, he smiled. She turned her chair to face him. "I feel lighter." "You should." "I finally understand something," she said thoughtfully. "Respect given too late isn't respect. It's fear. And love given after harm isn't healing, it's apology." Andrew walked over and gently wrapped his arms around her. "You deserved better from all of us." "I have better now," she whispered. Back at the Walker house, Marilyn sat alone most nights. The house was spotless, quiet. Her garden bloomed beautifully, but no one came to admire it. The teacups remained in the cupboard, untouched. The guest room Olivia once used had been cleaned out, but she hadn't opened the door since they left. One afternoon, she sat at her desk and began writing again. "Dear Olivia and Andrew, I've been thinking a lot about silence, what it can heal, and what it can hide. I know I cannot undo what I did. I judged. I assumed. I failed to love when it mattered most. But this silence between us, if it means peace for you, I'll honor it. If it ever becomes a weight, know that my door is open. Not with expectations. Not with guilt. Just with a chair and a cup of tea and a mother still learning. With care. Marilyn." She didn't send it. Not yet. Some letters weren't meant to ask for forgiveness. Some were simply meant to sit and wait. Chapter 13. A Meeting Without Words. Autumn deepened in San Jose. The trees that once lined the streets in gold began to shed entirely, leaving bare branches against a steel-gray sky. Olivia found comfort in the change. It reminded her that letting go was natural and necessary. One chilly afternoon, she stopped by the local bookstore she loved. The owner, a kind older woman named Ruth, recognized her instantly. "Haven't seen you in a while, dear." "I've been settling things." "Life tends to stir itself before it quiets down," Ruth smiled. "You want your usual seat?" Olivia nodded, tucking a worn sketchbook under her arm. She spent the next hour by the window, drawing the interior of a sunlit reading nook, imagining it inside a future home she and Andrew might one day build, one without ghosts, one without measured silences. Just as she was packing up to leave, a quiet voice startled her. "Olivia?" She looked up. It was Marilyn. They stood facing each other near the self-help aisle, surrounded by books about healing, boundaries, grief, and forgiveness. Marilyn looked smaller than Olivia remembered, her eyes tired, her coat slightly wrinkled, her hands nervously holding the strap of her purse. "I didn't know you came here," she said softly. "I don't come here for people," Olivia replied gently. "I come here for quiet." Marilyn nodded, as if the truth in that statement was heavier than any insult she had ever thrown. "I won't stay long," she added. "I just wanted to see how you're doing." "I'm well." "That's good," Marilyn said, then hesitated. "You look strong." "I always was." That silenced them both. They moved to a small sitting area near the cafe, neither of them touching the paper cups they held. "I wrote you a letter," Marilyn began, voice low. "I didn't send it. I thought maybe you were better off without more words from me." "Maybe I am," Olivia said, not harshly. "I think about you both often." Marilyn continued. "Not because I miss control. I miss family. And I ruined it." Olivia looked at her for a long time. "You didn't ruin the family," she said. "You just made it smaller." Marilyn winced. "Is there any chance?" "No," Olivia said firmly, but not unkindly. "Not now. Maybe not ever. But I don't hate you, Marilyn. I just don't want to return to who I had to be around you." Marilyn blinked away tears she had tried to hold back. "I suppose that's fair." Olivia stood, placing her sketchbook into her bag. "Some things don't need a dramatic ending," she said. "They just need space." And with that, she turned and walked out of the store. Marilyn sat for a long while in the empty chair. She didn't chase after her. She didn't demand closure. Instead, she whispered to herself, letting go doesn't always mean giving up. Sometimes it just means stepping back. She looked down at the untouched cup of coffee in her hand. And for the first time, she didn't imagine Olivia sitting across from her. She simply hoped Olivia was walking towards something better. Chapter 14. A Different Kind of Family. The holiday season crept into San Jose, bringing twinkling lights and the scent of cinnamon drifting from bakeries on every street. Olivia and Andrew decorated their small townhouse with simple white fairy lights, a handmade wreath, and a small potted pine tree that sat proudly in the corner of their living room. "We'll plant it after New Year," Olivia said one evening, gently adjusting a tiny golden star on top. Andrew grinned. "Our first official holiday as just us." She nodded. "And it's enough." They declined invitations to larger family gatherings. Andrew's cousins reached out. His aunt tried to coax them back into the bigger circle, but he refused kindly. "We're rebuilding in our own way," he explained. Instead, they hosted a quiet dinner with two of Olivia's old college friends and one of Andrew's coworkers, people who had seen them for who they were, not who they weren't. There was laughter, stories, and the soft hum of music that didn't need to drown anything out. Olivia sat watching the group, her heart full. For the first time in years, she felt surrounded not by blood, but by choice. Meanwhile, Marilyn spent Christmas Eve alone. She had declined her sister's invitation. She didn't want pity. And she certainly didn't want to pretend nothing had happened. Instead, she baked gingerbread cookies, an old recipe she once made when Andrew was young. The scent filled the kitchen. But the silence in the house remained. She poured a glass of wine and turned on the old record player. Nat King Cole's voice filled the room with warmth she couldn't touch. At midnight, she opened the box of old ornaments from the attic. Among them was a crumpled photo of Andrew as a teenager, grinning beside a snowman, cheeks red, arms wrapped around a laughing Olivia. She hadn't remembered taking that photo. but now it felt like a postcard from a life she had ruined before she understood its worth. She hung the photo on the tree, not as a wish, as a reminder. On New Year's Day, Olivia and Andrew took the small pine tree to a park near their home. Together, they dug a shallow hole and gently lowered the roots into the earth. Andrew patted the soil down. Feels symbolic, doesn't it? Olivia smiled, brushing dirt from her fingers. It is. We didn't just leave something behind this year. We planted something new. He looked at her for a long time, then said, "You amaze me." She shook her head, laughing softly. "No. I just finally stopped trying to grow in poisoned ground." That evening, they stood together by the window, watching fireworks bloom silently across the sky. Andrew whispered, "Do you think she'll ever really change?" Olivia leaned her head against his shoulder. "Maybe. But change isn't what I need from her anymore." "What do you need?" She turned and met his eyes. "Nothing." And for the first time, nothing didn't feel like a loss. It felt like freedom. Chapter 15. What healing really looks like. February arrived with its quiet chill and soft skies. In the townhouse, the days flowed gently, quiet breakfasts, work that felt fulfilling. Evenings where laughter came more easily. The wounds of the past hadn't vanished, but they no longer stung at the touch. One morning, Olivia received a letter, not a message, not an email, but a real letter in a light blue envelope. The handwriting was familiar. Marilyn. She stood at the kitchen counter, turning it over slowly in her hands. Andrew looked up from the stove. "You don't have to read it," he said. "I know," she replied. But she did. "Dear Olivia, it's been months since we spoke, and I have not stopped thinking about the things I said and didn't say. I used to believe forgiveness came from saying the right words. But now I know that true forgiveness comes from living the right changes. I have started volunteering at a local community center. It's a small thing, but it reminds me every day how much I still have to learn. I don't expect anything from you. Not visits. Not replies. I only want you to know this. You taught me something I didn't realize I had forgotten. That respect is not given based on wealth or titles, but presence, kindness, and integrity. You were all those things long before I ever knew your name. I was too blind to see it. I am still sorry. But I am also grateful. Thank you for showing me who you are, even when I didn't deserve to know. Wishing you peace and all the life you're building. Marilyn." Olivia folded the letter and placed it in a drawer, not to be forgotten, but to be filed away with the past. A symbol of someone else's growth. Not her responsibility, but her legacy, perhaps. Later that day, she and Andrew walked through the park. The small pine tree they had planted in winter now showed signs of budding green. It was still early, but life was returning. Olivia knelt beside it and ran her fingers gently along a new sprout. "She really wrote it?" Andrew asked, crouching beside her. "She did. And I believe her." Andrew blinked. "Really?" She nodded. "But I also believe in distance. I believe in boundaries. I believe in not going back just because someone finally decided to see." He wrapped his arms around her. "I love you for that." Back at the Walker house, Marilyn stood at her window, watching a pair of children ride their bikes down the street, laughing. She didn't know if Olivia would ever respond, but she no longer waited for it like a sentence. She was learning how to be at peace with silence, how to accept the weight of consequences, and how to live in a way that might one day earn, not force, a second chance. As spring approached, Olivia finally said it out loud. "I'm not angry anymore." Andrew looked over. "Are you sure?" She smiled gently. Anger was never the point. The point was learning that some people will only love you after they learn who you are. And when they do, you have to decide whether that's love at all. "And what did you decide?" She looked out the window, sunlight dancing across her sketchbook. "That I choose the love that never asked me to prove my worth." Chapter 16. Living without permission. Spring arrived in quiet waves. The cherry blossoms in the city bloomed overnight, soft pink petals brushing against the windshields of cars and coating sidewalks like nature's confetti. Inside their cozy townhouse, Olivia awoke early each morning to sunlight and stillness. She no longer jolted awake expecting judgment waiting in the hallway. She no longer flinched at silence, fearing it was a prelude to confrontation. Now silence meant peace. And that, in itself, was a kind of victory. One morning, she sat at her work desk, reviewing a proposal for a new co-working space downtown. The client, a well-known startup founder, had asked specifically for a space that feels like a second chance. I want people to walk in and feel like they don't have to prove themselves, the client had explained. That line echoed in Olivia's heart. She knew that feeling. She designed the space with wide windows, soft textures, rooms with rounded corners, and common tables without a designated head. No one would sit above another. No one would shrink. Just like she had promised herself. When she emailed the final sketches, her client replied with 3 words, "This feels healing." And Olivia smiled. Meanwhile, Andrew had accepted a new position, leading a small team at a social impact firm that used tech to support underserved communities. It paid less than his last job, but he came home smiling. "This is the first time I've worked somewhere that feels like it matters," he said one night, holding her hand over dinner. "It shows," Olivia said. They clinked glasses, 2 people who had walked away from the life others had scripted for them and begun writing their own. One Sunday afternoon, Olivia received a call. It was from her father, Mr. Lu Min Kwang. "I have news," he said. "The company's restructuring. I'm stepping down. And I want you to take the seat." Olivia was quiet. "I know you walked away for peace," he continued. "But I'm not asking you to come back to the spotlight. I'm asking if you're ready to lead it differently. Quietly. On your own terms." She thought about the years she had spent hiding, not because she was afraid of power, but because she hated what people became around it. Now she wasn't afraid. Because she had already faced what was worse, being underestimated when she had nothing to prove. "I'll think about it," she said. Her father smiled on the other end of the line. "That's all I ask." That evening, Olivia and Andrew took a walk around the park where they had planted their little pine tree. It had grown taller, stronger, its branches no longer fragile but reaching. They stood silently beside it. Andrew touched the trunk gently. "Looks like it belongs here." Olivia nodded. "It does." He looked at her. "So do we." In the quiet of that blooming season, they didn't need permission to take up space. They didn't need validation to build a life. They had outgrown the wounds. They had replaced shame with strength. And they had found, together, a home that no longer had anything to prove. Just a place to be. Chapter 17, When the Past Comes Knocking. It was a Monday morning when the unexpected knock came. Olivia had just finished her second client call and was watering the indoor plants by the window. The knock was gentle, 2 firm taps, then silence. She glanced at the clock. No deliveries were due. No appointments scheduled. She opened the door, and there stood Marilyn, holding a glass jar of preserved lemons and a folded paper bag. Her hair was pulled back neatly. Her coat looked worn. But her eyes, once sharp, once full of scrutiny, were now heavy with something else entirely. Not regret. Something more raw. Uncertainty. "I know I should have called," Marilyn said. Olivia didn't reply immediately. I made these. Thought you might like them. I remember Andrew saying you used to make Moroccan chicken." She held out the jar. Olivia took it. Slowly. "Thank you." Marilyn hesitated. "May I come in?" There was a pause. Then Olivia stepped aside. The air inside the townhouse felt different with Marilyn there. She sat carefully at the edge of the couch, as if afraid to disturb something fragile. "I didn't come to ask for anything," she said, clasping her hands. "I know where I stand." Olivia sat across from her, quietly. I just needed you to see me trying, Marilyn continued. Not with words. With presence. That's what you told me once. Respect is about how someone shows up. She took a slow breath. So, I'm showing up. Late. But sincerely. Olivia studied her. Why now? Marilyn looked down. I'm not lonely. I'm alone. There's a difference. Loneliness passes. But this? This is the kind of silence that makes you look at everything you've built and realize no one's inside the house anymore. She paused. I thought you'd come back. I thought if I changed enough, you'd return. But I realize now, you didn't leave to punish me. You left to protect yourself. That's true, Olivia said softly. Marilyn nodded, swallowing a lump in her throat. I came to say, I understand that now. And I don't expect to be forgiven. But I'll never stop trying to be someone who deserves to be. The silence after her words wasn't heavy. It was thoughtful. Honest. Olivia finally stood and walked into the kitchen. She returned with 2 cups of tea, one for her, one for Marilyn. No sugar. Just jasmine. They sipped quietly. After a while, Olivia said, You can visit again, sometimes. Marilyn looked up, startled. But not often, Olivia added. And not for a while. Boundaries aren't meant to punish, they're meant to give space to heal. Marilyn nodded quickly. I'll take what you give. Gladly. Olivia looked into her mother-in-law's eyes, not with resentment. Not with softness. With clarity. We're not a family again, she said. But we might be something human. And that's enough. After Marilyn left, Andrew returned home from work. There's tea, Olivia said. And your mom stopped by. Andrew raised an eyebrow. Seriously? She brought lemons. Olivia smiled. He chuckled. That's new. Very. They stood together at the kitchen counter, sipping warm tea, their hands brushing now and then. There was no drama. No lingering shadows. Just a soft sense of something rebuilding. Not the past, but something entirely new. Chapter 18. Dinners with fewer words. Marilyn didn't visit again for 3 weeks. Not because she wasn't welcome, but because she understood what space truly meant now. When she did come, she brought things with quiet thoughtfulness. A loaf of fresh bread from a bakery Olivia once mentioned in passing, a small potted herb plant labeled rosemary with a tag that read, For New Beginnings. She didn't stay long. She never assumed. And she never mentioned the past unless Olivia brought it up, which, for a long time, she didn't. One Friday evening, Olivia sent a short message. Dinner Sunday. Just roast chicken and salad. 6 p.m. Marilyn replied. I'll bring dessert. Thank you. That Sunday, she arrived right on time, dressed simply, her hair tucked behind her ears. Olivia opened the door and offered a soft smile. Marilyn stepped inside, holding a homemade lemon tart wrapped in parchment. I hope this goes with chicken, she said, slightly nervous. It does, Olivia replied, taking the dish and motioning her to sit. Andrew was already in the kitchen, placing the last of the roasted vegetables onto a serving plate. Hi, Mom, he said warmly. Marilyn's eyes lingered on his face longer than expected, searching for something she thought she'd lost. He didn't flinch. He didn't withdraw. He smiled, and in that moment, she almost wept. Dinner was simple, quiet, safe, the clink of forks against plates, the warmth of fresh herbs in the air, casual conversation about the neighborhood, work, and the baby pine tree still growing steadily in the park. No one mentioned the house they once lived in. No one mentioned the wedding. No one mentioned forgiveness. They didn't have to, because this wasn't a reconciliation meal. It was a new beginning, one not built on apologies, but on the absence of harm. After dessert, Marilyn stood near the sink, awkwardly holding a dish towel. You don't have to clean, Olivia said gently. I want to, she replied. Let me do something without being asked. And Olivia let her. Later that night, after Marilyn had gone, Andrew and Olivia sat on the balcony with their usual cups of tea. "She's changed," Andrew said. Olivia nodded slowly. "She's learning how to exist without causing damage." "That's more than I thought I'd ever see." "Do you still hate her?" "No," Olivia said. "But I don't love her either. Not like before." She sipped her tea. "I think I'm just watching her now, like a stranger who once hurt me, and I'm seeing if she'll become something else." Andrew looked at her. "And if she doesn't?" "Then I'll be okay," she said quietly, "because I no longer tie my piece to who she decides to become." In the stillness of that night, Olivia realized something powerful. She had spent so long waiting to be seen, waiting for justice, waiting for softness. But she didn't need to be seen anymore. She was whole, even if no one ever said sorry again. Even if the people who hurt her never changed fully. Because her healing was no longer a response to others. It was hers. Owned. Protected. Unshakable. Chapter 19. The Second Wedding. The idea came to Andrew on a quiet April evening. As they sat under string lights on their small patio, sharing leftover cake and talking about nothing in particular. "You know what I'd like," he said, eyes soft with memory. "What?" Olivia replied, barefoot and relaxed, her chin resting on her hand. "A second wedding. Just for us." She looked at him, amused. "We're already married." "I know," he smiled. "But that first one, it never felt like ours. It felt like a performance in front of someone else's mirror. I want a day that's ours, full of people who know you, who love you. Who would have come even if they thought you had nothing to your name." Olivia was silent for a moment, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. Then she said, "Okay." They planned it quietly, intentionally. No grand halls, no guest list politics, no family obligations. Just a small outdoor ceremony at a vineyard on the outskirts of the city. The invitations were handwritten. The music was soft jazz. The guest list? 27 people, including the bakery owner, a neighbor couple, and Olivia's old literature professor from college. And this time, Olivia chose everything for herself. She wore a simple ivory dress with silk sleeves that moved like wind. Her father walked her down the aisle, his face full of unspoken pride, not for her status, but for her resilience. Andrew wore a gray suit and no tie, his smile so bright it made half the room tear up before the ceremony even began. There were no speeches about lineage, no comparisons, no apologies for absence. Only the presence of people who knew Olivia beyond labels, who knew Andrew beyond the family he came from, who understood that this wasn't a celebration of status. It was a return to joy, to choice, to each other. Marilyn received the invitation. It came by post, tied with a small sprig of dried lavender. She read it 3 times, then placed it on her kitchen table and stared at it for an hour. She didn't call. She didn't ask. But on the day of the wedding, she drove herself quietly to the venue and stood at the back of the ceremony, just far enough not to intrude. When Olivia walked down the aisle, radiant and unafraid, Marilyn's hands trembled. Not with jealousy, with awe. When it came time for the vows, Olivia's voice didn't shake. She said, "You saw me before anyone else believed in me. But more importantly, you believed in me when I had stopped believing in myself." Andrew's eyes were wet. "You taught me that love doesn't demand, it accepts. And I promise to always accept who you are, even when you outgrow who I thought you were." There was no applause, only silence, the kind that holds something sacred. Afterward, Marilyn approached Olivia outside, her hands empty, her heart full. "I know you didn't have to invite me," she said softly. "You're right," Olivia replied. Marilyn nodded. "But thank you for letting me come anyway." Olivia paused, then said, "Some doors stay closed, but some windows open if you knock the right way." Marilyn smiled. "Then I'll knock softly. And wait." They didn't hug, but they didn't turn away either. That night, as the last lanterns flickered and the guests slowly drifted home, Olivia and Andrew lay on a picnic blanket beneath the stars, fingers intertwined. "You think we'll always need second chances to get it right?" Andrew whispered. Olivia smiled. "Maybe, but I think the real miracle is we still try." Chapter 20. The final embrace. 6 months had passed since the second wedding. The townhouse had grown into something more than a home. It had become a sanctuary, a place where time moved at the pace of healing, where unspoken pain was given air, and where every corner held traces of recovery, not from a tragedy, but from the slow undoing of years of quiet harm. One evening in early October, Andrew received a call. It was short, quiet, and solemn. "Mom collapsed at the community center," said the voice on the other end. "She's stable now, but she's been asking for you." At the hospital, Marilyn lay still but awake, eyes framed by the sterile whiteness of the room. Tubes ran from her arms, machines blinked softly beside her. Her face, though paler, carried an expression not of fear, but peace. When Andrew walked in, she smiled with faint surprise. "I wasn't sure you'd come." He pulled a chair beside her. "I told you, I'd always show up. Just not always in the way you want." She chuckled, her voice thin. "Fair." There was a pause. Then, "Where's Olivia?" "She's parking. She wanted to give me this moment with you first." Marilyn's lips pressed into something halfway between sorrow and gratitude. "I've written everything down," she whispered. "Instructions, letters. I don't want her, or you, to have to clean up after me in any way." Andrew swallowed hard. "You're not dying." "Maybe not today," Marilyn said. "But someday. And when that day comes, I want to be remembered not for what I did wrong, but for how I tried to make it right." Olivia entered the room quietly. She walked to Marilyn's bedside, not hesitating. Marilyn looked up at her. "I didn't think I deserved to see you here." Olivia gently adjusted the edge of her blanket. "Deserving isn't always the point. Sometimes, we show up because we're strong enough to." There was a long pause. Then Marilyn whispered, "Would it be selfish to ask for one thing?" "What is it?" "A hug. Just once. To remember what love could have felt like if I had been better." Olivia looked at her for a moment. Then, without a word, leaned forward and wrapped her arms around the frail woman who had once been the source of so much pain. It wasn't a warm embrace. It wasn't a healing embrace. But it was real. It was final. And that was enough. Weeks later, Marilyn returned home. She walked with a cane, slower, but more thoughtful in every movement. Olivia and Andrew visited once a week, not out of obligation, but as an offering. Not out of guilt, but out of quiet, human compassion. Marilyn never asked for more. And they never offered beyond what was comfortable. It was the kind of peace built from ruins, not perfect, but honest. One crisp autumn afternoon, Olivia stood in the park where the small pine tree had now grown tall enough to cast shade. She placed her hand on its trunk and smiled. Andrew stood beside her. "You know," he said, "if we ever have a daughter, I hope she's like you." Olivia turned to him. "Strong." He nodded. "Strong enough to walk away, but also strong enough to come back." She reached for his hand. "I think I'd teach her something else too." "What?" "That sometimes the happiest endings don't mean everyone's embraced. Just that the ones who matter still stand beside you when the dust settles." He kissed the back of her hand. And under the canopy of their tree, the one that had once been fragile, but now stood rooted and unwavering, they stood, not as survivors of family conflict, but as builders of a new kind of legacy. One that didn't begin with blood, but with choice, with boundaries, with love earned, not expected.